Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Workers' Compensation Experience Modification Rating, what it is, how it impacts you, and how to improve it. I'm Vinny Civitello, Communications Manager for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. With us today are Bill Taffel and Lee Howell of NJM Insurance Group. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you tomorrow, along with the PowerPoint for today's presentation, so be on the lookout for those. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Questions tab. Bill and Lee would be happy to take all of your questions, so don't hesitate to write them in as they come to you, and really as they come to you, because you may forget what you wanted to know by the time we come to the Q&A. So now let's get things started. Bill?
Thanks, Vinny. Good morning. My name is Bill Taffel. I'm the Director of Workers' Compensation Underwriting at NJM. With me is Lee Howell, the Workers' Compensation Underwriting Administrator at NJM. Together, we have nearly 4 decades of experience in workers' compensation underwriting. Today's presentation is based on questions we often get from our policyholders and questions that you may have regarding the New Jersey Workers' Compensation Experience Modification Rating and the factor. At a high level, let's start with what will be covered today. We'll dig into what is an experience mod rating, how it's determined and who determines it, what factors influence the rating, and the influencers that can affect your premium from one year to the next. More importantly, why it should matter to you. And finally, some of the steps that you can take to improve or lower your experience mod. So let's get started. An experience modification rating can easily be described as a calculation that rates each employer using past payroll in order to predict expected losses, which are compared to the actual losses. The result is an experience modification factor. That mod factor is multiplied by subject premium to increase or decrease the premium. If you are expected to have X amount of losses and you have a lower amount, you will receive a credit mod or under 1.0, indicating your losses were better than expected and a lower premium. Conversely, if you experience higher losses than expected for your size and type operation, your mod and premium will be higher or a debit mod, over 1.0. So what's the purpose of rating? It compares the loss experience of employers in the same industry and job classifications in a specific state. It also modifies your workers' compensation premium. In other words, based on those industry and job averages, you are expected to have a predetermined amount of losses. And it serves as a pricing mechanism intended to encourage loss prevention measures and workplace safety. We'll get into more detail on how these factors determine your premium later in the presentation. Now I'd like to discuss the source of the data that is used to determine a 2017 rating. On this slide, you can see the experience years that go into a 2017 mod, and they are the 2015, 2014, and 2013 policy years. The question that we always get is, why isn't the 2016 policy data included in the 2017 mod calculation? The answer is that the 2016 data is not available at the time that the mod is calculated. Claims are not even reported to the carrier or valued yet. Insurers report the policyholder's audited class and payrolls to the New Jersey Compensation Rating and Inspection Bureau, or NJCRIB. It also is sometimes referred to as the Bureau. This data is reported around 6 months after expiration of a full year policy. They also report updated claims experience each year. A 3-year history or look back is always used in the calculation. There are always 500 job classifications in the state that are factored into the calculations. When looking at the next slide, think of the compilation and distribution of the data as almost a complete circle. First, the policyholder provides claims and payroll to their insurer for each year. The insurer then reports combined data, the data of all its policyholders, by year to the rating bureau. In New Jersey's case, this would be NJCRIB. NJCRIB combines and compares data against similar industries and expected losses. It then calculates and publishes the mod for each employer based on the data provided. Those mods are shared with the current insurer of the policyholder. The insurer applies the experience mod to the premium calculation for the upcoming year. The renewal premium is then shared with the policyholder, including the new mod. This completes the process circle. If at any time one group in this process does not receive the data transfer or feels the need to validate the data, it would request more information from the prior party or source in the circle. For example, we had a bureau request recently on data it received when it had questions about a policyholder that had large payroll but very few claims, which is unusual. So the bureau requested that we double check the reported claims. We did, and reported to the bureau that although it had a valid point regarding the low amount of claims, we had validated the data on this policy was correct. The reason this company had such low losses was that it had instituted a great safety program. So now let's get into how the rating is calculated. For many of you, the mod worksheet you see may look familiar. First, we start with class codes and rates. Here you see a fictional company, XYZ. The first area highlighted in yellow indicates your WC class codes. Next, the class code phraseology. And finally, the 3-year payroll totals. Again, for 2017 data, it would include the years 2015, 14, and 13. On this slide, the expected losses are highlighted in the lower left-hand corner. This is determined by taking your payroll and multiplying it by the current rates compared to the same process with each class's excess elements. Excess elements are like pure premium or loss costs, which are what it would take to pay the claims only, not accounting for the claims handling or legal costs. This area shows what a business is expected to have for total losses for its size and industry type. Next, we will review the claim section. The bottom half of this slide is where the actual risk incurred and modified losses are indicated by year and claim number. Loss amounts are broken out by indemnity and medical. For example, the first claim shows $500,000 indemnity and $500,000 medical in the actual incurred losses. The modified losses section has factors or variables used to value the losses. The calculation uses these factors to put more weight on those claims in areas to prevent action that should be taken, like frequency of claims. Another area, perhaps less in control, might be claim value above an established limit or cap. On this case, the first claim, both indemnity and medical are originally valued at $500,000 each. These are modified to $177,000 indemnity and $208,000 medical, which is limiting the claim amount in the calculation. Now that doesn't mean that there is a limit on the claims payout, but limits the impact on XYZ's experience mod. This is where a catastrophic loss would be limited in impact. The normal amount of the loss is separated from the remaining value or excess on the far right side. We will get into that further in the presentation. Now we get into the good part, actual versus expected losses. As previously touched on earlier, the bottom section highlighted in yellow is where we divide the actual final adjusted losses into the total expected losses. This gives us the experience mod calculated. In this example, we have $245,114 in total final adjusted losses, divided into $201,719 of total expected losses. The result is an experience mod of 1.215. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, if actual losses equal the expected losses, you would have a unity mod of 1.0. And yes, we have actually seen this happen. Highlighted on the bottom right is the most important number on the sheet. In this example, the experience mod is 1.215, as mentioned. Based on the fact that the actual modified losses for the 3-year period were higher than what was expected for this particular size and type of operation. This would be a debit mod. Okay, now that we know more about the calculation, let's talk about what influences your rating. This is a common question we get all the time, as people want to improve their rating and lower their premium. Your particular industry or class code will influence your rating. At NJM, we write about 90% of all job class codes in New Jersey. Premiums depend on the risk, which is also referred to industry and/or job type, as well as the claims. Here we have the two extremes. First, we have an office exposure with a low rate, and you wouldn't expect claims to be frequent or severe. Then we have a contracting, for comparison, with a higher rating. As indicated, expected incurred losses could be greater on higher rated risks. The interesting part is that since you would expect to have lower dollar amount of losses of claims in the office, this would increase your experience rating if you had the same dollar amount of claims as the contracting business. I like this next slide because it explains how there could be a possible change in your mod from year to year. We often get questions at policy renewal asking why policyholders' mod increased. Sometimes it's not obvious, but these next two slides should help answer that question. Your experience rating could rise if there's a decrease in the current class rates from the previous years. Now that the overall estimated premium might be lower, but the experience mod still goes up. This is because lower rates result in less expected losses. Obviously, if your losses increase, you will see an increase in your mod. This could be because of higher claims on the new year in the rating, or an upward development of older year claims in the rating. Your mod could rise if you have lower payrolls. If you have less employees, you are expected to have less claims. If you have a larger number of claims, this will have a bigger impact on increasing your mod. This is where the normal values have more weight or impact in the rating calculation. On the other hand, your experience mod could go down if your current class code rates go up, because based on your mod, you are expected to have more claims. Obviously, if your losses go down, so does the experience mod. Higher payrolls mean a lower mod. If you have more employees, you are expected to have more claims. If you have fewer claims and a frequency decrease, your experience mod would also decrease. Now, you may have a combination of some of these scenarios, but you can always tell by the experience mod factor difference which scenario had the greatest impact. At this point, I'd like to remind anyone who has a question to please submit them at any time during the presentation. Now, I'll turn it over to Lee Howe.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning. Let's now talk about why your experience mod matters to you and how it influences your business operations. We will get into more examples in a bit, but here's one illustration of how a premium can be impacted by an increased mod. A company with a mod of 1.0 and a subject premium of $100,000 pays $100,000 in modified premium. However, the same company with a mod of 1.2 will pay $120,000 or $20,000 more in premium. We will show a display of the difference in how one claim of $50,000 influences the mod compared to 5 claims of $10,000 each. More emphasis or weight is placed on smaller, frequent claims than one larger claim. Here's a listing of the normal limits over the last 5 years, both indemnity and medical. Why is it increasing? It's increasing because of the increasing cost of medical treatments and procedures, as well as higher employee wages. We will also show how a catastrophic or shock loss will influence the mod. What do we mean by catastrophic or shock loss? A catastrophe is an event or incident that injures more than one employee. For example, a manufacturing company has an explosion in which multiple shop workers are hurt, or a bus company whose driver and several bus aides are injured due to a motor vehicle accident. A shock loss is an event or incident that occurs to only one employee. Using the bus example, the bus driver is the only person on the bus and is involved in a serious motor vehicle accident, and the incurred losses exceed $1 million. Here's a listing of the New Jersey excess limits over the last 5 years. Anything greater than $180,000 in indemnity in 2016 would not be included in the experience. As Bill indicated earlier, this is the maximum amount used in the mod calculation, however, does not impact the claim payout itself. Here are the normal and excess limits for 2017. As indicated previously, they are increased from 2016 due to the increased continued cost in medical and increase in wages. To give a comparison on how the limits impact the mod, we have a restaurant business whose average annual wage for employees is $1.1 million for each of the 3 years in the experience. There's a $10,000 claim, $5,000 in indemnity, and $5,000 in medical in each of the 3 years. For the 2017, and using the 2017 normal and excess limits, the mod would be 1.119. If the limits were capped at, say, the 2013 limits of $4,900 in indemnity and $1,800 in medical, the mod would be 1.044. The next few slides will show how frequency and severity can affect your overall premium. Using a general construction company as an example, this company has 3 classifications: carpentry, sales, and clerical. The associated payroll is multiplied by the class rate and divided by 100 to determine the manual premium per class. The sum of the class manual premium is then applied to the employer's liability limits selected by the policyholder, which results in the total subject premium. The subject premium is multiplied by the mod factor to determine the modified premium. In this example, we have one $50,000 claim and the mod is 0.635 and the premium is $181,335. Using the same company and policy, this example is using 5 claims of $10,000 each. The mod increased over 7% to 0.684 with an increase in premium of $13,718. In this example, one shock loss of $1 million. While the mod is still a credit and under 1.0, it did increase over 25% with an increase in premium of $48,677. Total incurred of $1 million. However, it's 10 claims of $100,000 each. The mod is now a 41% debit that increased the premium by $150,000. As you can see, frequency has a significant impact on the mod and premium. So why is the rating important? It determines what you pay in premium. Our policyholders will frequently request experience mod letters, which include a history of the last several years of their mods to provide to their clients. The history may influence a client's decision to utilize a company's services. As an example, contractors may need this information to include in their bids for projects. It also encourages a safe working environment. So let's take a look at what you can do to help reduce your mod. It is important to be proactive. Establish procedures and have them in place before an injury occurs. Set guidelines on how, when, and to whom injuries are reported. The sooner the claim is reported to the insurer, the sooner the treatment can begin and the sooner the employee can return to work. Delays in reporting injuries may lead to litigation, which can increase the claim costs. Communication is key, and at all levels. For newer employees, provide a safety orientation and communicate your company's guidelines if an injury occurs. Utilize your insurer's loss prevention programs. For example, as part of our underwriting process here at NJM, we provide safety inspections and a loss analysis to assist in reducing potential claims. We also perform safety seminars with supervisors or employees on a variety of topics, such as safe lifting techniques, ergonomics, or safe forklift operations. Borrow carrier videos or stream online training videos for your employees. Lag time in reporting can result in higher incurred costs. What does that mean? For example, if an injured employee does not report it promptly, they may seek care with a provider that the employer is not aware of and may not be within its medical network. Network providers may have contract pricing that keeps the cost of the treatment down. Alternatively, an employee may not think that the injury warrants treatment at that time. Untreated injuries may result in longer healing process once treatment does begin. Prompt reporting also provides an early detection of fraud indicators. Look at your past claims to determine if any additional safety measures can be implemented. For example, if you have a lot of slip and fall or tripping injuries, monitor the areas in which these claims are occurring. Ensure the floor is free of spills or excess liquids or items that can pose tripping hazards. Slip-resistant shoes or safety mats may help in reducing these types of claims. Make sure equipment safety mechanisms, such as machine guards or shields, are not overridden to speed up production. These are a few examples and areas of concern that your insurer can assist you with. Your loss history impacts your premium, either positively with a credit mod or negatively with a debit mod. We have shown examples of how frequency and severity affects your mod. More emphasis and greater weight is placed on smaller, frequent claims. Being proactive and developing a loss prevention program will assist in controlling losses, thereby impacting your premium in a positive manner. Here's our contact information for Bill and myself. Should you have any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. However, at this point, we would like to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Lee. Looks like we have a couple already, but I want to give everyone else a moment to type in anything they have. So while I'm doing that, I'd like to take a second and stall time and remind you about the Handouts tab. I used to get a lot of questions from people about how to download the PowerPoint slides, but ever since I started doing this and explaining this, that's gone down. So if you look at your tab on the side of your screen, there's a Handouts tab right in there. It says WC, that stands for Workers' Comp, Experience Modification Rating. That's the PowerPoint slides. You can download that now, or sometime tomorrow or the day after, that will be emailed to you automatically along with the video recording of today's presentation. So there's also the Questions tab right underneath that. Type in a question and I'll make sure that Bill and Lee answer it. And don't be shy. When you're done with this, a survey is going to come up on your screen asking you what you thought of the webinar. And whenever a question comes in like, oh, I wish they touched on this, or I came in to hear about this, I always just ask why they didn't ask the question. So you've got 3 experts here, so take advantage of them. And yes, I did say 3, because actually joining us now is Ann DeBellis, head of the Workers' Comp Legal Department at NJM, to help us out with the Q&A. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into our first question that comes from Tricia, who would like to know, how do small businesses account for one injury?
Well, accounting for one injury is a tough question related to experience rating. It really depends on the size of the payroll and the class code's job type that you have. So the obvious answer is really to try to work to, with all the safety recommendations that were mentioned at the tail end of the presentation, to work on those to try to prevent the injury from happening before it actually does. But once it does, you can always reach out to your current carrier and try to figure out, the impacts that it may have in the future calculation. This is a question we normally get from our policyholders, and we try to estimate, the impacts and the influence on the mod, and also obviously on the future premium.
Cool. Tom asks, what does a business need to do to qualify for an experience rating? Lee?
That's a good question. Actually, you really don't need to do anything. Your carrier is obligated to provide premium audits with your payroll information, and claims are reported to the Bureau annually. If your premium size qualifies, which is right around $6,000, which may change each year, the size qualification, the Bureau will automatically calculate the mod for you. It may take a couple of years for you to develop an experience, but again, the threshold is $6,000 in annual premium in order to qualify.
Okay, we have one from Joseph, who's asking if you're able to supply a sample safety policy.
We wouldn't have that available. What I would do is reach out to your current carrier to see what type of safety programs and safety information brochures that they may have to provide to you. We don't have any samples.
However, our loss prevention department does an annual inspection of our volunteer policies, and they point out any unsafe activities. We have lots of videos, expertise in-house. We can do air sampling, hearing level sampling, as well as provide experts in ergonomics depending on the need of a particular policyholder. They're really underwriting inspections, but they're designed to help the policyholder reduce their losses, which reduces their premium.
Awesome. Joan asks, and this is kind of a long one, so let me get through this. I had no losses in the policy year going out of rating, and I had no losses in the most recent year going into rating for 2017. So my claims were the same. Why did my mod go up?
Right. So there could be a few reasons for this. It's difficult to answer without seeing the actual data, but the most common thing that would be a factor here is the total payroll for the current data is lower, or if the rate on the current data is lower. In both of these cases, you would be expected to have fewer losses in the calculation. But since the losses are exactly the same as you stated, the mod would go up.
Okay, we got one from Mary, who asks, if an employee does some driving to make deliveries, but spends the majority of his time doing warehouse work, would he still be classified as a driver for premium purposes?
Typically, your carrier will take a look at the overall exposure to this employee to determine what classification they should be in. So I would ask, from a premium audit perspective, your auditor may pick up that employee in a certain area as well. Typically and overall, they have to spend a greater portion of their job duties driving in order to be classified as that.
One thing to also keep in mind is, as businesses evolve, they change. The roles of the employees change. You're adapting to your market. So this is a common thing that does happen. And for our policies, what we do is as Anna had mentioned, we do annual inspections too, to see, and we ask the question, did anything change in your operation? If we see something that's changed, we try to assess all the information, determine proper classification, and then what we do is we write a letter to the New Jersey Compensation Rating Inspection Bureau and weigh in all the facts. If they have enough facts based on our insureds and what they tell us and what we've provided in our letter, they will make a determination of what the proper class code is. The Bureau would have the final decision on this.
And you shouldn't be afraid to offer that information or engage in those discussions with your carrier, because things change at the bureau level too. Rates, classifications change, rates can go up and go down, and you may feel a great impact after the audit of a change in your business that impacts your premium.
Great. Anthony asks, I just had a huge loss. It will probably be over $1 million. How will this affect my mod and my premium?
Well, again, assuming you're experience rated, the claim will be capped both from a normal and excess perspective based upon the years that claim is going into the experience. So if you're currently within your 2017 policy period, that claim won't go into your rating until 2019, 2020, and 21. That's when the claim would appear, and it will be subject to the limits on that particular mod year. So as an example, we used, Bill had an example previously where the claim caps were at 177,000 and 208,000. Therefore, anything above that in that claim would not go into the experience, but again, it would not be impacted by the claim payout from the claims perspective.
Excellent. Shlomo asks, if an employer pays out the smaller claims without reporting it, will that eventually lower the mod, and is that a suggested practice?
Well, keep in mind that one thing we did not mention is this policy information, the class, the payrolls, and the incurred losses that is reported to everyone's carrier is then fed to the New Jersey Compensation Rating Inspection Bureau. They use this information to develop the rates each year. So any information coming in should be, or any claims coming in should be reported to your carrier. However, you know, to get to your question, if the claims are lower, as we explained, your mod could be lower.
And say from a claims perspective and a legal perspective, two things. First of all, the policy contract, under the terms of the policy contract, you are required to report that loss. There's a really good reason to do it, because those losses can develop unfavorably, and you've lost the opportunity to have your professional carrier involved from the get-go. Providing you know, band-aid care, first aid care, those claims don't have to be, but anything more serious, anything that requires medical attention should be reported to your carrier.
Excellent. John asks, you briefly mentioned that on your 2017 mod, the 2016 policy information is not taken into account. Why is that?
Okay, so yeah, we briefly touched on this in the presentation, and at the time that the Bureau is calculating the 2017 rating, it's 6 months prior to the effective date of that rating. Keep in mind that the 2016 policy year is still going on. There could be claims that didn't happen yet, haven't been reported yet. Obviously, medical bills have not been submitted to the carrier, and claims haven't been valued. So there's no possible way for a carrier to report it to the Bureau and the Bureau to use that in the 17 rating. However, 2016 claim will be in the rating the following year.
Suzanne asks if you can re-explain what shock loss is.
A shock loss is a loss that usually impacts or will impact only one employee at that time, whatever the injury is. It could be a slip and a fall that could escalate into a lot of treatment that's necessary. Something out of the normal for your type business. Catastrophic loss or catastrophic loss would then impact more than one employee for the same incident.
Okay. Kathy asks, you mentioned incurred losses. What goes into an incurred loss?
Incurred losses include both medical indemnity payouts plus as anticipated payouts for the rest of the duration of the claim on a particular injury. The anticipated payouts are called reserves. We do report both paid and the reserves to the Bureau, and that's what they use to calculate the mod.
Cool. Michelle asks, does NJM come out and give safety orientations to employees?
Well, with all our policyholders, like Ann had previously explained, from a new business standpoint, first we inspect potential applicants, potential insureds, and an inspection is done. They evaluate the operation to make sure the class codes are right and report that back to underwriting. We then review it. But as Ann indicated, on renewal, every year we'll send out our loss prevention reps, and they'll do inspections to further come up with possible safety recommendations. They'll offer the forklift training, safety seminars as far as it pertains to a particular industry type. And that's usually how it works with your current carrier.
Frida asks, if I had several carriers for the 3-year period in the rating data, how would that work?
Each carrier is obligated to report the audited payroll. So you could have 3 different carriers on a specific time frame where the carriers are required to report the audited payroll and the loss information 6 months after the policy period expires. So you could have 3 separate carriers. They're obligated for each year, 6 months after the policy period, to report that information to the Bureau. The Bureau then will combine the information and calculate it all together for the next year's modification.
Okie dokie. Kelly asks, do self-insured employers also have mod ratings assigned for excess coverage?
That's a tough question for us to answer because we are an insurer. So we're not dealing too much with self-insured employers. But one thing to keep in mind is that the payrolls, class codes, incurred losses, even for self-insured employers, still need to be reported to the Compensation Rating Inspection Bureau to help develop the rates. That's very important for them. And should you decide at some point in time to go out of self-insure and go back to a carrier, you want that claims and payroll history so that mod could be developed, especially if you have a safety program in place and you have an established credit mod. So you want that data sent to the Bureau so that they can calculate that and an insurer can apply that when you come out of the self-insurance.
Excellent. I've got 2 more questions here, but I'm letting you guys know this now so that if you want to sneak more stuff in while we're answering these 2, we'll keep it going as long as you guys keep supplying questions. So Alexandra, I guess referring back to what Ann was talking about, asks, how do we get access to the safety inspections, loss analysis, and safety training that you mentioned that NJM offers?
Okay, for our current insureds, you go to njm.com, and on the site you go to claims, and there is the download. Most people these days, they download the safety videos, they stream them. For all our policyholders, it's free of charge, and there are literally hundreds these days of safety videos, and that's very important because they're specific. You pick out the one that you like that's specific to your industry type. For example, if you are a food industry, you might want something on slips and falls. If you're a warehouse, you might want the safety video on forklift safety. So it would be on our website. All our policyholders have access to that, and again, for policyholders, it's free of charge.
And Jim Clancy, who's the head of our loss prevention department, has done BIA webinars. So Vinny, I'm thinking they would probably be able to go and look at his prior work. I know he's also done a lot of BIA presentations as well. After every inspection, we send an annual report to the policyholder, what the inspection showed, but we're more than happy to work with any particular policyholder throughout the year. They don't have to wait for that annual inspection to help them make their losses less frequent and less severe, because we operate as a mutual company. So to the extent that we have one individual policyholder have a lower premium, that helps all of us, because our underwriting gain goes back to our policyholders in the form of dividend. And as Jim says, the best way to keep your premium low is to prevent those injuries from occurring in the first place.
Yeah, you know, I never actually plug this, but we might as well. If you go to youtube.com/NJBIA, that's our YouTube page. We actually have a playlist right on that homepage of all the webinars we've ever done that you can watch for free right there. And you can look at them by topic. I mean, it'll be by the name of the webinars, but workers' comp, you'll find them, and you can watch Jim's previous webinars with us, as well as anything else you might be interested in watching. So that's youtube.com/NJBIA. And back to our questions. This one might be a little specific. I think she's referring to the form that you guys had up earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. Deborah asks, what is the difference between code 2802 and 5403?
I believe 2802 is more of a shop experience or shop operations. 5403 should be carpentry, outside, work being performed at somebody's house or some commercial building or something like that. So one is basically operations outside of shop, one are basically operations inside a shop.
Also, 5403 is carpentry, as Lee said, and after the phraseology, it'll say NOC. That means not otherwise classified. So if you're in the contracting and you can't be specifically put in one of the other contracting classes, you're reserved to be put in 5403 NOC, not otherwise classified. It's almost a catch-all. Where 2802 would be specific work that you're doing and isolated to.
Very impressive. Okay, so we're back in that same boat. We have 2 questions left, but of course, sneak in anything you got. So Brian says, I have many solicitors advising me that they can reduce my workers' compensation premium costs. How can they?
Well, first question I'd ask him is what they are going to do for him. Is it something that they can do in terms of cost right then and there? Maybe they will take a look at his overall history and work with that individual for the future mod, what types of things that they can control with the claims. Perhaps it's something different in terms of classification or something else that's applied to your policy. So not knowing specifically what they're advising you, I would ask them, what can you do and how can you do it to reduce my premium and my mod?
Very cool. Suzanne asks, if an employee refuses medical treatment for a minor injury, is that a bad thing regarding the rating?
Getting to Ann's point earlier, where it's a very good practice to report claims, the problem with something like that is you could have a small infection, they refuse medical, it turns out and blows up into a huge claim where, as Lee indicated, if you don't report the claim early in the details, your carrier cannot help and give the expert advice and direction on handling the claim and reducing the amount of claim before it explodes into the catastrophic loss that we talked about earlier. So, it's in general terms, but it could evolve into something bigger where you've really lost control of the claim.
And Bill, this is kind of a question to you, but if they report that claim and the carrier doesn't pay any medical expenses, what's the impact on their premium? There wouldn't be, right?
Actually, there's no impact on the policy or the experience rating. So there's no impact on the premium on that policy.
So then by reporting the claim, they're really protecting themselves and they're not hurting their mod at all.
Right, so they're being proactive, they're getting it on the books. Our claims department, in our case, would take the claim, have all the details ready. So should that individual need further medical assistance, they just call in and we direct and we go from there, and we have all the information ahead of time, and we have the claim reported with all the details, and it moves a lot faster if they need immediate medical attention.
I agree that it doesn't happen too frequently, but oftentimes employers who don't report the claims right away, when something bad occurs, we in the claims and legal department, we're really in a bad position because we don't have the information that we could have developed right at the time to get the facts and the details that would help us defend the position later or direct the care appropriately.
And just finally, you really want to protect your employees and you want to help them. So you want to encourage them to get the medical attention that they need.
And actually, while you guys were having that little powwow, Suzanne clarified, we do report those claims, by the way. Sometimes it's a personal nature, like cutting themselves in the cafe at lunch. Would that affect anything that you guys just said, or?
That falls right in line with what Anna and I were discussing as far as reporting the claim. Again, if it's a minor claim like a cut, it's reported. If it doesn't amount to anything other than a Band-Aid, it comes into the rating as a 0 in the medical, and it has no effect on the mod or the premium.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have, so it's as good a time as any to bring this to a close. But if you've got more, if you think of something later, Bill and Lee's contact information is right on the screen there, and you're going to be getting, and I'm sure we could get a hold of Ann if you contact one of the two of them. But if you think of something later, this presentation is going to be emailed to you along with the video anyway, so you'll be able to check back and see what their contact info is if you didn't write it down or anything like that. But don't forget, all of you are receiving a recording of today's webinar and the PowerPoint slides via email. And when you close out of the webinar, a survey will come up on your screen that we hope you'll fill out so we can understand how best to provide you important information in a webinar format. Our next webinar will be a special election-themed NJBIA live from the state capitol that'll take place Thursday, November 9th. So be sure to tune in for that. So until next time, for Bill Taffel, Lee Howell, and Ann DeBellis, this is Vinny Civitello thanking you for being with us this morning and wishing you a great day.